Greetings, everyone. Well, I watched it again for you people. I hope you appreciate it. X-Men: The Last Stand. Yep, just finished watching it. Want to get this review filmed and over with so I can get on with my life. All for the sake of completeness. Let's get right to it. Today on the Multimedia Chronicles. I remember getting into an argument with a guy on Blu-ray.com, the message forums there a while back, and he was adamant that this was the best of the X-Men trilogy. No, I'm sorry. You are wrong. That is your opinion. Fine. Great. Congratulations. You have an opinion. And you're wrong. The whole time I was watching this, I was trying to put my finger on exactly what it is about this one that just does not work as well as the first two. Because the first two are great. I mean, they're not perfect. The first one in particular does have some flaws with it. The second one just freaking nails it. I mean, the second one is an X-Men movie and really gets it right. And the way it ends with the death of Jean Grey, and you see the phoenix shape kind of vaguely outlined in the water. It really sets it up and gets you excited for the next part. So, you know, at the time when this came out in theaters, I couldn't wait to rush out to see it. It's like, oh, yes, finally. And the trailers showed clearly they're doing the phoenix thing. This is going to be amazing. And it's got Beast in it. Oh, my God. And Angel. And wow, this is going to be fantastic. Best one yet. These just keep getting better and better. And then that wasn't the case. This was a perfect example of studio interference and, you know, inner political bullshit of Hollywood getting in the way. I mean, all the ingredients were there. They had a couple of pretty cool storylines to work with. The Cure storyline and the Dark Phoenix storyline. I should mention the Ultimate X-Men version of the Dark Phoenix storyline. That's a big mistake I made in my original rant, mainly because I knew jack shit about the Ultimate X-Men. My main background with the X-Men comics is the classic X-Men comics, before all of the retcons and reinterpretations and redos. Yeah, I come from an old school background, so the only Phoenix saga I ever knew was the Phoenix Saga, the original Phoenix Saga, where the Phoenix was not a psychological side of Jean Grey's personality that Professor X had helped her to develop to control her huge powers, but rather it was an alien force that she took into herself to help them fight an intergalactic space war, essentially, and save the world that way. And then the Phoenix Force refused to leave because it liked being human, and that led into the Dark Phoenix story where it was basically Jean trying to deal with the Phoenix side of herself and whatnot. Now, eventually, even that was retconned in that when Jean supposedly died at the end of the Dark Phoenix saga, it wasn't actually Jean, it was the Phoenix. The Phoenix had secretly squirreled Jean away in a cocoon at the bottom of the ocean and had taken over pretending to be Jean that whole time. Apparently the reasoning for that was the powers that be at Marvel felt that, well, you know, Jean's been a hero since the beginnings of the X-Men. To have her turn bad like that just isn't going to sit right with the long-term fans, so we got to find a way to make it right. So that's what they did. They did the Cocoon story, which later led into the creation of X-Factor, which was not a bad thing because we got to see the original team back in action. But anyway, we're talking way too much about the comics here. But anyway, so it was interesting sort of bearing all of those different things in mind. Because we have the Ultimate X-Men version where it's not a cosmic force, it's something within Jean, almost like a split personality. And in Ultimate X-Men, if you want to see how it plays out there, it takes place between issues 21 to 25 of Ultimate X-Men, and then plays out over the course of the rest of it, essentially, in, different story arcs along the way. But that's where it begins, is there. And she's with the Hellfire Club, so very similar to the Dark Phoenix story in some respects, like the original, that is, but a very different manifestation of the Phoenix. And that's the one they went with in X-Men The Last Stand. However, I noticed, keeping all of those bits of lore in mind as I was watching, they borrowed elements from both. Because when Professor X is kind of mind-probing her to find out what happened and how she survived, he says, it seems that the Phoenix Force put her into a cocoon of psychic energy at the bottom of the lake. I'm like, I know what they're referring to there. So, that was a nice little nod to the resurrection of Jean Grey in the original comics. But at the same time, we're getting kind of a mishmash of lores here. We're getting bits of the original, bits of the the redone Ultimate version, and just kind of mishmashing it all together. Now, the big question is, does it work? Well, it started off okay. You have that lovely scene at the beginning from 20 years ago with, Ian McKellen's hair dyed brown and Patrick Stewart still bald, going to see young Jean Grey when her powers are emerging, her parents are freaking out, and to invite her to the school to help her control her powers. And that's a nice little beginning to that story. And then we have the other scene that follows that with young Angel trying to file his wing nubs off. That's quite disturbing and heartbreaking. But, even that, well, you know what, we'll get into that in a moment, because that gets into the sort of attempts at emotionally powerful moments that fall flat in this movie. And I think that's one of the big problems with it, but we'll get to that in a moment here. So, carrying on with the Phoenix story. So the Phoenix story develops, kind of nicely, and they have the Cure story going at the same time, kind of on the sidelines. The main focus for the first half of the movie is all about Jean and her resurrection and her trying to balance the dual personalities of Phoenix and Jean, but Phoenix is clearly taking over and causing a lot of trouble. And that seems to be developing nicely. And then they have the big confrontation at Jean's parents' house. Her parents are mysteriously vanished. I don't know if she killed them or what, probably. And then we had that big whole battle there. Now, the battle sequence there between the mutants and Magneto's mutants and Magneto and Charles trying to talk down Jean, and then the whole psychic battle with Charles and Jean. I don't know. I felt this in the theater, too. This should be a really emotionally powerful scene. I should be feeling really bad for Jean and her psychological struggle, and really bad for Charles and his psychological struggle, trying to help her and failing, and the fact that, he's about to be killed, and we know this is going to happen because that's clearly where this scene is going. Yet, you compare that to even just the tiniest little emotional scenes in the first two movies. The first two scenes of the first movie. You got Magneto getting his parents taken away, and Rogue putting her boyfriend in a coma. Both very powerful emotional scenes that make you feel. You have known these characters for less than a minute, and you already feel something. You feel a connection there. You feel the feels, man. So we get all of these moments throughout Last Stand that are clear attempts to tug at the heartstrings, yet they fail dismally. Is it the fault of the actors? No. The actors are giving it their all and doing their best. Is it the fault of the direction? Good old Brett Ratner? Well, partly yes, absolutely, because these types of emotional scenes need time to breathe. You need to let the emotion get to that point before you take us away from it. You need to let it rise to where you're trying to get it to before you take it away. And that's one of the big problems, is these scenes end too abruptly. The moments are not allowed to mature and to give us that emotional feedback. I mean, you pick any random scene in which characters are struggling or hurt or upset or anything from the first two movies and compare it to similar such scenes in The Last Stand, and there is just no comparison. And I was trying to think, like, why is that? What is so different about the way these scenes are being done versus the first two? And it finally hit me in rewatching it just now. One of the big things, the music. I completely blanked on this the last time I talked about the movie, probably because it had actually been a couple of years since I had seen it. The last time I saw this was in theaters. That's how long it's been since I've actually seen the movie. So I was remembering the moments that pissed me off when I did my rant, but the details escaped me because it had been so long. Well, now I'm remembering the details, man, because I just finished watching it like 10 minutes ago. But the music, the score, it is just god-awful. It is so overblown and pompous, and it's this uplifting action-adventure score. And during the emotional moments, we have completely inappropriate music for those moments. And that's one of the big things that was taking me out of those scenes in the rewatch tonight. And that's it. That's that and the poor direction. Two reasons right there that made all those emotional scenes fall flat. And for me, the X-Men has always been about not just action, okay? Not just action, but depth of character. The emotional connection that you feel with those characters, and that you feel the characters feel with each other. That's what keeps you coming back, is caring about these characters and what happens to them. When I was watching Last Stand, even though these were characters that I'd spent 2 movies with now, I really felt nothing when they died. I mean, for God's sake, Cyclops? His death is off-screen. Cyclops, one of the original X-Men, beloved character. I don't care if you love or hate him. The fact is, he has his fans. He is deserving of respect in that he should have at least got a frickin' on-screen death. And it's like, fine, okay, you don't want to show it in the moment that it happens, fine. You want it to be a bit of a mystery, so we find out when everybody else finds out, fine. Show it in a flashback, then. Oh, there's a flashback. Oh, yeah, there's a flashback to that scene. But everything is so disjointed and confusing and surreal, you can't tell what the fuck is going on. So, again, here we have one of the main characters of one of the original X-Men, even not even taking the comics into account, one of the guys who's been there since X-Men 1, one of the main characters, dies, and who cares? You know? Of course, we know why they killed Cyclops off, because James Marsden was off doing Superman Returns. And we know why Brett Ratner, the hack, was hired, because Tom Rothman, fucking motherfucker that he is, wanted to beat Superman Returns' release date. So he pushed up the production of X-Men 3 just to stick it to Bryan Singer. That's good business. How the fuck is this guy still employed? Seriously. If you go and read his IMDb page, Tom Rothman, oh my god, it is full of so much self-aggrandizing, patting yourself on the back bullshit. It's like, well, I was there was lots of money made by Fox, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, and a lot of the projects that you turned down that were later greenlit after you left made them even more money. So fuck off. Stop ruining franchises, for the love of Christ. Ugh. When I did the original rant, I laid all the blame on Brett Ratner. Since then, I've learned all about the legacy that is Tom Rothman. And really, you know, Brett Ratner was a director for hire. He was brought in, I mean, clearly unqualified to do that kind of movie. But he was brought in because it was money, you know. Let's, yeah, do this movie. You did the Rush Hour movies. They made a lot of money. So let's have you do the X-Men movie, because it'll make a lot of money too. And it did. It did make money. Probably largely because people went to see it on the strength of the first two, thinking it was going to be just as good. So some specific things that, you know, let's talk wasted opportunities. Angel. Angel was freaking awesome. And what's his face? Ben Foster, who played him, fantastic actor. He could have brought some emotional weight to it, and he sure as hell tried in the roughly 2.5 minutes of screen time that he got. Like, total wasted opportunity. Angel was legitimately awesome. They did a great job on Angel and got a fantastic actor to play him. He could have really ran with that role and made it something really special and memorable. But did they give him anything to do? No. We'll just throw him in there, just, you know, to sort of help the Cure story along a little bit. Have a couple of cool flying scenes. Have him rescue the whole story arc of the Angel. He starts the movie. He's like one of the things that starts the movie. You have the scene of him as a boy, traumatized because his wings are emerging. He doesn't want his dad to find out. He's trying to hide it, file them off. That's a great, you know, disturbing yet emotionally, well, potentially emotionally powerful scene. The kid acting in that scene does a great job. Awesome. Good job, kid. You killed it. But the direction is so poor that, again, well, and not only that, okay, the emotional intensity of the scene is drained out of it by the poor direction, and then bam, it goes straight into the opening titles. What? How is that an exciting lead? You take us from this emotional scene into the opening titles, like, it's basically a crash cut to the opening titles, and, like, what the hell? Like, it just feels wrong. You look at the first two, it goes into the titles appropriately. You know, have a little scene to get you pumped, and then into the titles, and that gets you more pumped. That's the way it should be. But instead we have these two disjointed, disconnected scenes, no link to them at all, really, and then into the titles. I mean, they're trying to link them by saying, this is 20 years ago, this is 10 years ago. Oh, and then we have the titles, and then we have the Danger Room scene, but we don't know it's the Danger Room. It's like, sometime in the near future. Ooh, yeah, I talked about that before, how do they, okay, great, they have a Sentinel in the Danger Room, and it's basically a Days of Future Past scenario in the Danger Room, but they haven't introduced the Sentinels in this world yet. So how would they know what that is? I mean, I guess to them it's generic giant robot number 57. We'll, you know, fight that in the Danger Room, because that'll be a good challenge. So yeah, so here's Angel's entire story arc from start to finish. He's a little boy, afraid of his father finding out that he's got wings, so he's trying to file them off. Father discovers the mutant kid, invents the cure, tries to give his son the cure. The son's like, okay, give me the cure. And he's like, no, wait a minute, I don't want the cure. And he flies away. Angel goes to Xavier's school for gifted youngsters and is promptly shown the door. But then they change their mind and let him in anyway. Then during the final battle on Alcatraz Island, Angel's father gets thrown out of the window and Angel flies in and saves him. Oh boy, good thing we didn't get rid of those wings, huh? And that's it. That is the entire story of Angel. Wasted fucking opportunity. Okay, you want to do the Phoenix story? Fine, do the Phoenix story. I think what I originally said was do the Phoenix story, because that's what you were leading up to in the second one, clearly. And then do Days of Future Past for the fourth one. That's not quite how it worked out, but, you know, I get the feeling the last couple movies, Bryan Singer has been cleaning up the messes of the past, retconning things into oblivion, and making things right again. Bless him. The one new character that was introduced and they actually did some cool things with, Beast. Beast was like the best new thing about this movie, easily. Kelsey Grammer, awesome as Beast. I've always loved the character of Beast. I love the fact that he's a walking oxymoron almost, because stereotypically I should say, you have the creature character as the mindless beast, essentially. But Beast is ridiculously intelligent. Like he's basically a scientist. He's a politician. He's very well read, very well spoken, just super super smart. But he looks like the freaking Wolfman. I just love that sort of taking the conventions of what we know and putting it on its ear. I think that's great, and I've always loved that character. It was great to finally see Kitty Pryde actually a part of the team. Oh my god. Played by the always wonderful Ellen Page. I love Ellen Page so much. But it's funny, she's been kind of a throwaway character in the past two movies. I mean, she has a cameo in the first one where she just kind of, forgets her books and then runs through the door after it's closed. And then in the second one, when Stryker's men are infiltrating the mansion, you see her just fall through the bed to escape and stuff like that. Every time played by a different actress. So she was always just kind of this throwaway character, this one who could walk through walls. I mean, she was referred to in the opening Senate meeting scene of X1 as the one who can walk through walls. What's to stop her from walking into your homes, So it was great to finally see her made a proper part of the team. It is unfortunate that we will not see her again for a few movies down the road, but, we'll again get to that when we get to it. The other problem I have is characters acting out of character. And this is something I did mention back in the old rant. I will mention it again now, as there's a few more that have sprung to mind. Mystique, for example, gets some pretty cool scenes at the beginning. I love how, when she's chained up in the truck, how she's taking on different forms and just basically messing with the guards. There's a great deleted scene, by the way, where it's the scene where she's disguised herself as the president and the guard comes up and yells at her. In the deleted scenes, he says, "With respect, Mr. President, shut the fuck up." They should have left that in. That could be their one F-bomb and still have the PG-13 rating. I mean, come on. That was a great little, appropriate use of an F-bomb. But, of course, they pussied out and went with a softer version of essentially the same line. But then, of course, Mystique gets hit with the cure gun and loses her power, and then Magneto immediately abandons her. No, I'm sorry, but that still just does not sit right with me, that he would just abandon her like that. I mean, okay, she doesn't have her shape-shifting ability. She's still a competent computer hacker and spy and stuff like that. I mean, there's still stuff she can do and contribute to the cause, It just always bothered me that he just blows her off immediately as soon as she loses. Because, I mean, Magneto is something of a hard ass, sure, but it has been shown that he has a caring side. And there's the whole thing with Rogue and Bobby. There's one thing that Rogue says to Bobby that I just thought was really cold and out of character for her, and just not the kind of thing I would really expect her to say. Namely, she says, "You're a guy, and you only think about one thing." Like, really? We're going there? Come on. Basically saying you only want sex. And, okay, if that was the case, you wouldn't be his girlfriend. And besides, couldn't they just use a condom? I mean, really. If they use a condom, you can have sex. I mean, it's only if there's contact with the skin. You just have to be a little... Okay, that's getting a little... We're going to stop right there. But, I mean, still, there are ways that they could do things. I mean, come on. If if that was such a big issue to Bobby, he would not have her as his girlfriend. Actually, speaking of deleted scenes, there's an alternate version of the scene where Bobby takes Kitty ice skating just to help her feel better, where they actually do share a kiss, and Rogue is watching. I think they made the right decision not to go with that version, but rather have it more kind of, keep the tension. Oh my god, an emotional moment that they actually did somewhat well. Holy shit. Then there was another alternate scene where Rogue reappears at the end and she's talking to Bobby. In the theatrical version, she's taken the cure. She took the cure and they hold hands, bare hands, for the first time. And they live happily ever after, presumably. In the alternate version, it's the opposite of that, where she basically says, "I couldn't do it. This is me. This is who I am. you'll just have to accept it. And Bobby's cool with that because Bobby's a nice guy. Gotta love Bobby. And then they hold hands again, but she's got the glove on this time. So, yeah. Yeah, there was a few interesting things in the deleted scenes. I kept watching them, hoping, like, okay, where's the big thing they cut out that would have fixed everything? But yeah, no, it wasn't there. It just was not there. The most that was there was a few bits in there that I thought would have been cool to have included. For example, there was some more of the action sequences, essentially. There's a scene on Alcatraz Island where Storm calls up a tidal wave and just drops it at the mutants and then electrifies the water. Like, that was actually pretty cool. I would have liked to see that in the movie. Then there's a couple of shots in the fight between Wolverine and Juggernaut where he actually manages to stab him with his claws. And there's one where he's got his claws buried in Juggernaut, and he holds out his others and calls to Storm. She sends an electric bolt, which goes through his body, and Logan's just like, and then electrocutes Juggernaut and knocks him flat on his ass. So I thought that would have been cool. Would have been nice to have that in there. I think they probably just cut it out for flow reasons, though, because the main focus of that scene really was Jean versus Professor X. So while this other fight's going on in the background and there's lots of cool stuff happening, it wasn't the main focus. Now, this said, I have to say the action sequences were actually pretty well done. That doesn't really surprise me because, I mean, Brett Ratner comes from an action background. Maybe that's why they hired him. I mean, he did the Rush Hour movies, which are action comedies. So the guy knows how to do action scenes. And for the most part, the action scenes were fine and exciting and had some fun little moments and stuff like that. I didn't really have a problem with those. And I hear a lot of people who defend this movie, they say, well, the action was great. Yes, the action was great. But everything else wasn't. It's not... You can't have a movie that's just action with nothing else, with characters you don't care about and whatnot. It gets boring really fast. I mean, look at any movie where the action scenes have gone on too long. You can probably think of a dozen examples right off the top of your head right now. They're out there. And when an action movie does that, it becomes boring. So no, an action movie should never be all about the action. You need that downtime, you need that breather time between action sequences. And you get that with The Last Stand, but the timing's all off. Like, it just doesn't flow properly. I see a lot of people bitch and moan about the portrayal of the Juggernaut. A lot of people don't like when he says, "I'm the Juggernaut, bitch!" And it's like, well, I didn't really mind that. I mean, he was just kind of... I mean, the Juggernaut's always been a very cocky character anyway, like, even in the comics. So I didn't have a problem with that part of his attitude, that he was, a little bit more of a potty mouth than he is in the comics, but otherwise, I did not really have a problem with that. I like that they got this, a genuinely large guy to play him and stuff like that. The problem I had with it was the having him a mutant. Because when he goes in to get the kid, he loses his power. He loses his Juggernaut power and just gets knocked flat on his ass. And it's like, well, in the comics, he's not a mutant. Even if you've only watched the animated series from the 90s, he clearly states that he's not a mutant. His powers are magical. That's magic with a K, by the way. Or I guess with a CK. Magical. Yeah, they spell it weird in the Marvel Universe. But other than that, I really didn't have a problem with it. I liked a lot of the other mutants that they introduced. Arclight was cool. Would have liked to see her actually do a little more other than just standing there looking so damn sexy. I don't know what it is about her. She's just a beautiful, beautiful woman with the blue hair and everything. Maybe it's the blue hair. I just love blue hair. I don't know. Not just blue hair, just those funky colors. I love the funky colored hair. Keep doing the funky colored hair, ladies. I love it. And then the other guy with the, I think he's named Quill, something like that. Anyway, the guy with like the spines that would come out, the porcupine spines. He was cool. And there was a lot of other, blink and you'll miss them mutants as well. Just looking at the cast list, I was like, oh, apparently Psylocke was in it somewhere. Okay. Yeah, there's so many mutant cameos in it. I mean, it's impossible to catch them all first time through. But, or 10 years after you've only seen it in the theater. Oh, I should mention, there was another nice little deleted scene where Wolverine actually goes back to the bar where we first met him in the first movie. And there's nobody there. It's basically closed. He just goes in wanting to get a beer. And the bartender's there with the shotgun. And it's the same guy from the first movie. The get out of my bar, you freak guy. Yeah, it's him. So he's there. And they have a little conversation. And, it would have been a nice little coda. So overall, yeah, for the most part, my opinion still stands. It is easily the weakest of the original trilogy, and very frustrating for its weaknesses, because there was so much potential there. I mean, they were adapting a couple of otherwise really interesting storylines, the Ultimate X-Men version of the Phoenix story and the Cure storyline, both of which have been adapted in other mediums before, quite successfully, and I just don't get how they could have messed it up that badly. Well, actually, I do. 2 words. Tom Rothman. That's how they messed it up that badly. It's like they kept putting it off and putting it off. You know, one of the big reasons that Bryan Singer was not able to do it was because they wouldn't negotiate with him. I mean, he gave them 2 hit movies in a row. They should have signed him when X2 was still in theaters to do X3. That should have been a done deal. But no, they didn't. They waffled and waited until finally Warner Brothers was like, hey, want to do a Superman movie for us? He's like, fuck yeah, I love Superman. So he went off to do Superman. And then guess what? X-Men 3 gets greenlighted. Just to spite Bryan Singer. Don't tell me that that's not what it was, because you know full well that is absolutely what it was. X3 is a result of a Tom Rothman tantrum. That's what happened. There's your explanation. Well, I think that about covers everything I want to cover, so we're going to call it a day here. It's a day! Quick thank you to my Patreon sponsors. Thanks, Patreon sponsors. You guys and gals are awesome, especially Get Your Gorgeous On, the Awesome E-Mag by Michelle O'Toole and Simon Hedger, and of course, Kyle Pellegrini, my highest level sponsors. Thanks, guys. You guys and gals are awesome. Alrighty, that is it from me to you for now, so we'll see you next time for more of the X-Fest. Checking out another awesome movie, X-Men Origins Wolverine. Honestly, I prefer that one over this one. I think it's got more good to it than this one, but it is by no means perfect either. And I'm sure you know some of the complaints I'm going to have about it, having seen my review of the first X-Men related review I did this month. Yeah, okay, they fucked up Deadpool, alright? I have a lot to say about that, but we'll deal with that next time. Alright, that is it from me to you for now, so until next time, thanks for watching, and sayonara.